Mr. Mayor and your gathered group. I'm James Dick. I live up in the unincorporated area. I just have a couple of points, questions. First of all, what is your definition of a large lot? When you're talking about future adjacencies, when you say a large lot for industrial to rural agriculture, for example, what is your definition of a large lot, size-wise? Is there one?
I don't know that there.
Well, we need one.
The definition for the purposes of this
Well,
presentation.
you didn't know, but what I'm talking about is if you're talking about the future adjacencies and where you can impact areas going from one to the other, and there's a lot of agriculture and rural area out there, and you talk about you being able to take industrial to a rural agricultural area on large lots. So what is a large lot? We need to know what that is. I mean, there are a lot of people that have agricultural property. Some have 10 acres, some have 300 acres, some have 65,000 acres. But what is a large lot? So I'd appreciate if you guys would consider that. Secondly, what is your definition of moderate density housing? What does that mean? Like per acre, what does it mean? Because lawyers pick you apart, they pick the county apart and everybody else apart on that thing, but what do we have to look at? I'm not trying to be picky, I just want to know what the definition is. There's got to be a number. How many houses per acre or whatever. The last thing I want to say is, this has to do with some of the tree cutting that's been going on, and I'm a big complainer about a lot of that stuff. But this is a kudo, I want to say, because I hope Plum Creek will follow it more. I've talked to Tim Jackson about this before. I live in an area that I have two sides of my property on Plum Creek. 6 years ago, on one part of my property, they cut the trees right up to the fence, including taking the fence down. And I had to build a new fence. Sorry. This past year, they came around the other side where there's some of it that is, it's definitely dangerous in terms of water. It's a floodplain, flood zone. And 6 years ago, they tried to cut that property, but they got stuck. And it took them 6 months to get the equipment out. They cut it just recently. And I just want to congratulate them for, I went out there, matter of fact, we watched the property all day they were cutting nearby. And they gave us a zone back further. They told me they were not allowed to touch that. So somebody's listening to something. And I just hope, whether it be in this current zoning situation you run into that, or out further as they try to develop other lands, that's a good start. And I hope you'll keep, I'm saying that to Tim, I know he's listening. But I just want to say that's what we need to say. Because the problem that these rural people have, especially if they abut Hawthorne, is they're scared to death of what's going to happen to their property and their lifestyle. And I realize life changes. God knows I came here from Jacksonville to get away from what they called reasonable zoning, because it wasn't reasonable at all. So I just ask that you be sensitive to that, because there are a lot of those properties that are people that have no intention of selling the property. They moved there because of what it was. And that's a kudo. So let's keep it up, and I'll try to help anywhere I can on that side, because that's what I look for. I'm just looking for real balance, not just the East County balances out with the West County on number of people and number of jobs or whatever. But I want it to also be balanced ecologically, and we've got a lot of history. You got a lot of old Florida over here. Don't just bury it. So enough said.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
I am up here. My name is Marshall Irby. I live outside of Windsor. I'd like to bring a little bit about wildlife, because that's what we're talking about. You know, we talk about corridors. Well, animals don't read very well. Not only that is, I've experienced this around Orlando and everything. You got to go to the zoo to see an animal. Also, animals, a good friend of mine had this happen to him. They built up all around them. They had a beautiful area, and he had 25, 30 deer every day coming to his house because he was feeding them, because they had been pushed into a corridor. Well, when they're in the corridor, now he's finding out about 10 years later that the coyotes are killing all the baby deer because the coyotes going in. That's kind of insignificant. But also kind of wonder, are we talking to Plum Creek, or did they merge, or who are we talking to? I mean, I don't even know who. I thought we was talking to Plum Creek, but I heard now the F merged with somebody, which I can't even pronounce it. But I just want to say that people need to realize that I haven't had one word here said about our aquifer, about our water. How much water is it going to take? It's going to take more water. And not only one more thing, I know I'm excited, but we got beautiful lakes here. Do we really want to overpopulate our lakes here with people that are overusing our lakes, more people than we can handle? This is the only good place that we've got in this part of Florida, in this beautiful country. But I think that we need to realize that us people here now, 20 years from now, if they do everything you want to do, you won't have a word to say about what's going on here. That's about all I can say. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Belinda Lubin, and I've lived here all my life. My family, many generations back, have been here. We live outside of the city limits, but we are surrounded by Plum Creek. We also have a business over here that will be adjacent to Plum Creek property. I just want to say thank you to the commissioners and to the city employees, because I know all of you have caught a lot of flack for all this. And I really do feel like you guys have all tried to put the best forward for Hawthorne and to make it a better place for all of us to live. I grew up here, I went to high school here. There was no opportunity, there's no jobs, you have to go somewhere else to get work. My son's at UF right now, electrical engineering, and I just would really love to have him be able to stay here locally and not have to go to another state or another city to find work. I mean, our kids here, they can't even do like on-the-job training anymore because there's no place for them to go. So just thank you, that's all I want to say.
Hi, my name's Diana Vogel. Just to clarify something, you had all indicated when you were going over the industrial land that the city had typically used 35-foot buffers. Well, most of their industrial land is concentrated in industrial park, which is nowhere near residential land. And not only that, but even along the creeks and the waterways, a resident has to keep 65 feet away for as buffer. So here you're talking about a 35 to 50-foot buffer that is substantial for adjacent to a residential area to put a railroad spur. I'm just horrified. When you had told me just 2 weeks ago that was conceptual, and now it's acting like it's a done deal. And I don't know what that little area is to the west. You were saying it's inconsequential little things. That little area outside of the buffer there, to the farthest to the west. I couldn't tell what that was. Can anybody tell me?
What now? Is it this
That
one?
little area to the west, you said was with the pointer, it was a little right there directly across from me.
Can you go over there and point it out on the map here?
It was this area, I guess. What is that there on the wall? It's numbered.
Oh, he was talking about the smaller scale development that is inconsequential to the wetlands that are in that area because it can be designed around the wetlands that exist there. It won't
What
impact
kind
the
of smaller concentrated development? What does that entail?
It could be office, it could be warehouse, it could be residential, the way the plans were.
Well, I'm a real estate broker, and I pulled out some files, and in 2007, I was involved in trying to market some industrial land in Hawthorne, and it turns out you have already industrial zone land where the Jackson Stonework factory was, and then the chicken area, the old chicken farm. All that land was bought up in 2007 and 8 by people that it's industrial zone to be developed. How come you're not pursuing that? It already has a railroad spur and everything.
We are already are pursuing it. It's a CSX select site actually, so we're still pursuing that as well.
Okay, well, I don't really see a need to, you know, do another plan to put a huge industrial park out here, next to, that is a wildlife corridor. I mean, you know, I'll invite y'all to come over and do an assessment on my land, because I'm right smack in the middle of that little area that's affected. And, you know, and you do need to do, you know, before, the county requires on all their industrial zone land, you have to do a complete tree survey, telling what kinds of trees they are, where they're located. You have to have a habitat, animal survey. There's a whole host of things, and nobody's said anything. It's like,
That'll be done before the development part of it, as was just stated just here a second ago.
well, you know, 35 feet is not substantial, neither is 50. And, you know, you say there's a few scattered houses. Well, there's more than a few scattered houses. There's 16 right there smack in the middle. So I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'm Lori Wiggins. I'm from here. I live on 2082 out by Magnesia Springs. I live in Melrose now, but I've always been here and I've always been close by. My brother and his wife have an organic farm. Their land is adjacent, and I'll kind of point it out. It's somewhere in this area right here. That's just an area that I would really like the commissioners to understand that it is organic. So they need those buffers, and it's important for you to understand how the water can flow across that land. And I know that Matt said there won't be any runoff and stuff like that, but how do you stop that? Especially if you have like conservation land near that, or if say there's a swamp head or there's water that's partially on Plum Creek land, partially on the organic farmland. In here I read, let me see if I can find it, that they're not going to have buffers next to the ag land.
That was part of some of the county's buffers as far as what they currently have for light industrial next to agriculture.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a point that for them in particular, I don't know about the plan as a whole, but for that particular area with an organic farm being there, it's very, very important that they have those buffers. Especially if you're dealing with like a pond that they share, because the cattle are going to be grazing in that. So I would just like to kind of bring that to your attention, so that, you know, some of those areas might require something a little bit different, or, you know, a little bit more stringent things.
That was the benefit that Chris was saying about the areas where the red area is at, is that we can come up with design-specific buffers for that area, instead of having just an overall, everybody gets this. It may not work for some areas, so.
I really wanted them to come tonight because I'm not a farmer and I really don't understand the land, but they work the land. And they sell to local restaurants here. And I'm sure they sell to local residents. And they've invested their whole life and money into this. And it's really, really important that you guys pay attention to the people that are adjacent to that, because this is their home. They don't know any other place, you know. I had to move away from here, but I lived as close as I could because I wanted to stay near it, because this is my family. And I just want you guys to really connect with these people that, you know, are next to this, because I don't know what kind of noise, I don't even know what these warehouses are. I don't know, like light industrial. The rail spur thing really bothers me, because I took a trip to Baldwin to see what a rail spur was, and it smelled like the Coppers. I don't know how many of you have lived here forever, but if you remember Coppers and that toxic site, that's what it smelled like. And to have that next to an organic farm, or those ties that are soaked in that toxic stuff, it running off all over the place, it's really scary. And so if there's anything you can do to pay particular attention to that, I would be very grateful.
Well, if you can put me in touch with your brother, Mr. Hill there, then we can take a look at what their requirements are for their organic farm.
Yes.
Because those are some of the, I mean, it's not just residential I was talking about with the conservation, but the adverse impacts that way. And that way, maybe we can come up with something around that area that'll keep it from adversely impacting.
Fantastic.
But to get to the smell of a rail spur, Baldwin's completely different.
I know it is.
It's a rail yard,
A
a rail yard versus a rail spur. We currently already have a rail spur that's south of town here that feeds Georgia Pacific and the property that Ms. Vogel was talking about.
Yeah.
And so we have that currently, and so it'll be real similar to that.
I've tried to get out and see
Yeah,
the
no
world
problem.
and get outside
That's good.
Hawthorne.
It's good. It's all good.
But I don't know what the industrial warehouses are. I don't know how many that is. I don't know any of that. So I don't know what the noise level is, what the lights and all that. But I know that you have to be careful if you spray for bugs and all that.
Well, and as we get closer to the design specific, as we mentioned earlier, Ms. Vogel, it is a conceptual idea to give people an idea of where stuff would be at. Putting the conservation parts on here really nails down where that area is going to be at more instead of just a conceptual view, but it doesn't mean that a warehouse has to go there or a residential has to go there. We'll get to that part as we get through the planned unit development, the PUD, and we'll be able to set up some of that stuff. For instance, I hate those orange scatter lights, that the street lights that just scatter light everywhere. So in my opinion, as we get closer to some of this, we'll start looking at stuff like directional lighting with the LED and stuff like that that's out there now, as somebody mentioned earlier about Ms. Arrington, I think, about new standards that are out there that we can improve upon. And I think that's what we'll look at. And the commission has given all direction that we're trying to make this work for the longevity of it, not just throwing something out there. So we're happy to work with them through the planned unit development. That's no problem.
And I'm just going to throw one more thing out here.
Yeah, throw. Or toss.
I know that you talked about the residents wouldn't be using potable water to water their lawns and stuff like
Irrigation,
that.
yeah.
So it wouldn't be irrigated. And it would mean a lot to me if the industrial areas had to live by those same rules. Because that's a huge area. They'll consume a lot of water. And if we're going to require our residents and encourage them to do that, I would also like to see the businesses do that as well.
Okay. We'll definitely look at that in the planned unit development part of it. The words of caution I would throw out there, especially since it's a commercial area, is it may be commercial agriculture. And so you have to have irrigation for something like that. That's just a for instance type thing. But we'll get to it as we get through the planned unit development, and I'm sure you'll be involved.
Gotcha.
Anybody else?
Would you like Chris to go through an abbreviated presentation for the
Sure.
chair?
We have with us the chair of the Lafayette County Commission, and I know y'all can't discuss a whole lot because we have also Commissioner Cornell came in, and so I know you can't discuss a whole lot, but for sunshine part of it. But we do have some of the stuff here. Chris can go through just some of the highlights of what we went over. We just got to the end of it in citizen comment, and if you could just run through some of the addition presentation here. Just the main additions that we talked about. Would be good.
He's loading it up.
He's loading the presentation.
Are we gonna have more citizen comment, or was that the end?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Nobody was up at the podium. That's why I got into commissioner
I
election.
was waiting to see the next one. I just have a
We'll
few
do that
questions.
next. Yes, ma'am. Sorry. Okay, so let me see if I can restart it. We're at the very end. Okay.
Basically, we broke it down to the three major points from the letter that was sent by the county. addressing improvements to the wetland standards or wetland protection standards, identifying additional conservation areas, and then the specific buffers for incompatible uses. I'm going to kind of just jump through this real quickly. Again, this area that we're discussing tonight is the EA Hawthorne. That's the dark purple. When we discussed the wetlands and conservation areas, we grouped those together because we felt like those go hand in hand. This graphic just shows you the current wetlands that have been surveyed and flagged on site. Again, the wetlands are currently undergoing a jurisdiction determination right now. We looked at the wetland policies currently in the City of Hawthorne's comprehensive plan, which require a 35-foot minimum upland buffer. Of course, they utilize the Army Corps standards and Water Management District standards. In the EA Hawthorne mixed-use category, we've included the no net loss of wetland function and to prioritize wetland mitigation within the EA Hawthorne mixed-use area. So that was already adopted as part of this last amendment process. Again, just kind of jumping through, this is just showing a comparison of the county's current wetland policies, and the county requires 35-foot minimums and 50-foot average for wetlands and surface waters that are less than half an acre. And then greater than half acre, they require a 50-foot minimum and 75-foot average. Again, I'm just going to kind of jump through this. You probably already knew these standards already. So looking at the Army Corps standards, again, these apply to the City of Hawthorne. They require them to define an overall project purpose, analyze all alternatives, and when they get into the process of getting a permit, it cannot be issued if a practical alternative exists that would have less adverse impact on the aquatic ecosystem, so the least environmentally damaging practicable alternative, and then requires compensatory mitigation to offset the adverse impacts. So again, I'm just jumping through this. I apologize if you...
That's not that chart.
Yeah, I'm not sure why this didn't come through in the presentation, but that just shows you a comparison of our peer communities here. Mr. Jackson took us through the initial conceptual development plan. If you'd like, I can go through it again, but I think it's... and so the big what for that came out of this is the designating the EA or HCON conservation land and offering a new land use category within the comprehensive plan. And what that sets out to do is to designate those primary wetland systems, so those big swaths designated by those green arrows. Again, the EA HCON, or the new conservation land use category, is those dark green lands. You can see that better here in this slide. It would allow for, let's get to the summary page here. It would allow for the same uses that are in the EA conservation land area, which is part of the sector plan. So allow silviculture, recreation, open space, hunting areas, wildlife preserves, mitigation areas, water conservation, low intensity agricultural uses, so no road crops. But it would allow rail and road crossings on the property. Now, another potential change to the comprehensive plan that the applicant, the city, is looking at doing is adding a 50-foot average to the current 35-foot minimum that's in the EA Hawthorne mixed-use area. We've had some discussion. We looked at the buffers between incompatible uses. We identified, and we're here for some of that discussion, we identified areas where we have existing adjacencies. Again, these existing adjacencies are based on the property appraiser's use codes. So we have what is considered residential in the yellow, and agriculture in that kind of brown. Now that's a transparent layer, so it's kind of hard to see the color there. But that shows you what is currently on the ground. The black is the vacant area, and the blue is government or institutional. This shows the future land use. Now, predominantly, the future land use in that area is rural agriculture. Now, that hatched area that you see just to the northwest corner of the property is a conservation easement. And another noteworthy point of this slide is that there's a rural community employment center. If you can see, that's in the yellow, or the red. And that's just south of State Road 20. I used the pointer, but this doesn't work on the screen.
And it's in the unincorporated area, so it's in the county.
Yeah.
That same map is
So, this slide shows where there are no issues, or at least that we've identified no issues or any problems with future adjacencies. So what the city has currently on the books for their future land use map, and what those adjacencies look like with the county's future land use map. And those blue lines, along the perimeter of the property show the areas that we've determined are not an issue. Now, the ones that we have looked at and determined that there are potentially to have issues are the ones in the red. So those are predominantly the light industrial up against residential, or light industrial against agriculture, and that's essentially what this slide shows. Now, the city currently has buffering requirements in their code and in the comprehensive plan. For light industrial, this is, again, we're kind of drilling down to the zoning portion, and they require a 25-foot buffer for the light industrial zoning district. Of course, a landscape buffer that's 80% or more opaque, between 2 and 6 feet in height, and in lieu of that, a wall or fence may be erected at 6 feet in height. Now, when we looked at the plan unit development criteria, this also has a rather lengthy section on external compatibility. So during the determination and findings, as the city looks at this plan unit development, we have to make these findings on these conditions, and that's basically looking at the uses from the future land use map, the existing uses in the zoning districts, so existing and future or planned uses surrounding the PUD area. Also noteworthy of the PUD criteria, they have a perimeter requirement. So if there is a structure, building, or street located at the perimeter of the development, it shall be permanently screened by a landscape buffer. And I included the land development regulation section, and that's 4.2, which provides the additional requirements for landscape buffers. So we looked at what the county has in their comprehensive plan. This is the buffer matrix. We looked at the light industrial adjacent to agriculture and low density residential. Light industrial adjacent to agriculture requires no buffer. However, light industrial adjacent to low density residential requires a medium density buffer. And as part of the discovery process and looking at the PUD criteria, we decided that that the next step in amending the comprehensive plan, it would be a good idea to require all of the EA Hawthorne mixed-use areas to rezone to PUD. So right now, that is not a condition currently in the comprehensive plan. That is one that we provide as a potential solution. So next steps, we look to the board for direction, of course, and anticipate potential comprehensive plan amendments. As we've discussed tonight, no date has been determined. And the applicant will be submitting a PUD application. Again, no date has been determined on when that will come down the pike. So, as
Any comments or?
Cliff's notes of the presentation.